Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go over the grammar rules for this week. So, the first part of commas. Alright, so I'm going into the notes. So today is A through D. Alright, so what you need to know about commas. Rule number A. Use a comma to separate items in a series. The series could be single words, groups of words, or numbers. So you know this. Use commas with a list. So for example, line graphs, comma, scatter plots, comma, bar charts, etc. Alright, to separate the last two items in the list, like right here, or there, the one that comes before the and, the or, it's called an Oxford comma, and sometimes it is not grammatically necessary, but in a lot of instances it is. So I would urge you just to always use it because it's easier. But if for some reason you really need to save that one character and it doesn't impede understanding, then you are welcome to leave it out. But for example, if you said that I invited KKK members, Dr. Sanger and Mr. Good to my graduation party. So in this example, without the Oxford comma, it reads, I invited KKK members, Dr. Sanger and Mr. Good to my graduation party. So without that comma before the final item in your list, it looks like Dr. Sanger and Mr. Good are KKK members. But in fact, you're trying to say that I invited a couple KKK members, I invited Dr. Sanger, and then I invited Mr. Good. So in situations like that, the Oxford comma is necessary. So I would just urge you to pretty much always use it. Alright, B. Use a comma between two independent clauses joined by a coordinating conjunction, such as fanboys. So if you want to combine two complete sentences, you have that conjunction there. You also use a comma. We've talked about this before. So for example, Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in South African prisons for his anti-apartheid activism, comma, yet he was elected president after his release, etc. Alright, C. If you have two or more adjectives that you're using to describe a noun, then use commas to separate the adjectives that equally modify the noun. So for example, she is brilliant, comma, engaging, comma, demanding. Pavarotti is known for his unique, comma, silken voice. Alright. Then, direct address, last one for today. Use a comma to separate a noun of direct address from the rest of the sentence. So if you are trying to get someone's attention, use a comma after it. For example, Josh, comma, did you know most mammals are colorblind? Or listen, or your proposal. Alright. So that is it for today. You can play the grammar game to show your mastery of commas. Should I show you what it does? It's a chameleon game. So it's not just commas, it's all punctuation. But that's okay. Alright, next comma rules for week 12. So we're down to E. Introductory elements, use a comma after introductory phrases and clauses. So for example, after words such as yes, no, oh, well, for example. For example, comma, did you know? Use a comma after an introductory participial phrase or succession. So this is like a dependent clause, something that's describing something else in the sentence. Feeling exhausted and discouraged, comma, he gave up the search. And then use a comma after an introductory adverb clause. So again, this is a dependent clause. After the movie was over, comma. So those dependent clauses and introductory phrases use a comma after. F, use a comma to set off expressions that interrupt the sentence. These are sometimes known as apositives if it's a phrase that describes something else in the sentence, gives more information about it. So for example, Harper Lee, comma, author of To Kill a Mockingbird, comma, was a lifelong friend of Truman Capote. So you know this needs commas around it because if you took it out, the sentence would still make sense. So you could say Harper Lee was a lifelong friend of Truman Capote, and that makes sense. But if you want to put in that explanation, that additional info, you offset it by commas. Use it to set off parenthetical expressions, such as, after all, as a matter of fact, by the way. So if it looks like a place where you could use parentheses around it, again, you could take the phrase out of the sentence and the sentence would still make grammatical sense. You put commas around it. So I did notice, by the way, or, as a matter of fact, comma, things like that. All right, G, non-restrictive phrases and clauses. So this is kind of the same idea. Use commas to set off unnecessary or unrestrictive phrases or clauses. So if you can take the phrase out, then you need a comma around it. So in 1995, the first item sold on eBay, comma, the giant online auction website, comma, was a broken laser pointer. So that phrase is describing eBay as an apositive. Again, you can take it out. If the phrase is necessary for the sentence, then you cannot take it out. You cannot put commas around it. So for example, students who want extra credit must attend the concert. So this phrase, who want extra credit, is necessary because it's describing which students must attend. Alright, so for second set, I have a different, the same game. You can keep playing the same game. Or I have a worksheet that you are welcome to fill out. You can open with Google Docs and fill it out and resubmit. There's also another video that goes along with that worksheet just to talk you through it. Alright, so pause there for comma notes. Alright, up next we have quotation notes and quotation marks. So we've already done a lot of quotation marks in this class when we talked about quoting for literary analyses. When we talk about dialogue eventually, a lot of the rules are the same. First of all, titles of short works such as a song title, a poem, a short story, the chapter of a book, one episode of a TV show, an article, you put quotation marks around them. Alright, next, special words, like if you're using like quotations. His gourmet lunch consisted of chips, pretzels, and iced tea. Or if it's just you're trying to highlight it, like you're talking about a specific word and going through like the definition, you might want to do that. If you're directly quoting someone word for word from their writing or from their speaking, or if you're doing this in your own creative writing as dialogue and you made up the quote but we pretend like it's word for word, then you put quotation marks. So she replied, comma, I tried my best, period, quote. Or Zinsser warns against clutter, comma, quote, the disease of American writing, period, end quote. For a long quote, if you're quoting more than 4 lines, you do block form in MLA format, so You don't use quotation marks, just as an FYI. And yeah. Okay, punctuation placement. In most cases, the punctuation marks go inside the closing quotation marks. So for example, question mark quote, period quote, alright, so note, there are some exceptions. If the punctuation is part of the main sentence rather than part of the quote, so like, what is noteworthy about Poe's The Telltale Heart? So I'm asking you about that story, so then the question mark goes outside. But most other times it goes inside. Alright, so those are the rules about quotation marks. I have a game that you can play if you want to do, okay, well, if you want to do it that way. Okay, you can pause there. Alright, up next we have apostrophes. So the deal with apostrophes is, first of all, you use them to show possession for singular or plural nouns. For singular ones, you do apostrophe and then an S. For plural ones that already end in S, you just add the apostrophe. And then you, yeah. Alright, so singular, such as one computer, computer, apostrophe S, the computer's memory. Plural, such as students, every student's presentation, you have the S there to make it plural, and then you just do the apostrophe afterward. For indefinite pronouns, anyone, everyone, etc., it looks like a singular, well, it's treated as a singular noun, anyone's computer. Alright, and the other thing you need to know about that is use an apostrophe and S to form the plural only with a letter, number, sign, or words referred to as words. So, like additions, 9s, 7s, thank yous. You do not need to use an apostrophe and S to make plurals such as a family name, the Smiths, the 1960s, CDs, etc. Okay, and those are the apostrophe rules, so you can play the game if you wish to practice apostrophes. Alright, up next, colons and semicolons. So, colon, you can use it to introduce a quote or a list, or you can also just use it for emphasis. So those are the two dots, one above the other, dot, dot. So he always stands up to make the announcement we dread, colon, and then we have a quote, the test will be on Friday. Or to introduce a list, I had everything I needed for the experiment, colon, microscope, slides, and paper to write on. Or the last one for emphasis, there was a consistent theme throughout his lecture, colon, prepare now for the future. Versus a semicolon, the dot, and then the comma under it, you can use to join two closely related independent clauses. Those are two complete sentences. Or if you have a list of things that already has commas in it, like a list of 3 dates or 3 capitals of states, then you use a semicolon as like a mega comma to separate them. So the first one, if you just want to combine 2 sentences. Ransom Olds' car company no longer exists, semicolon. Henry Ford's company does. And if you want to use a conjunction there, you have to use a long conjunction, such as however, and then you would add a comma. You can't use a short conjunction there. Otherwise, you would just be doing a comma. Alright, and then if you have a list of 3 dates that already have commas in them, then you separate the dates with a semicolon. So the dates, July 4th, 1776, semicolon, it's like a big comma. December 7th, 1941, semicolon, and September 11th, 2001 are etched in my memory. Otherwise, without it, it would be confusing because it's like, are you separating, is that the July 4th the first thing, and then 1776 the second thing, etc. So those are the rules. Alright, so I have a game. 4 semicolons you can play. In Punctuation Island, you try to like use cannons to beat down the wall. It's a fun educational website. So you say where the semicolon will go, and then you get through the wall. Alright, or I do have a worksheet for this one. You would open with Google Docs and then correct the sentences. Okay, so that is semicolons and colons. Up next, ellipsis, which is a dot, dot, dot. You use it to show words that have been omitted, words you've taken out. Like if you're quoting something and there's a phrase that is not important to what you're actually arguing, you can just take it out and do dot, dot, dot to show that there was more there, but it's just not essential to your point. Or you can use ellipses to show a pause. My day was, well, kind of a disaster. So in creative writing, you might want to do that to show pause. And then a hyphen is another way to show a pause. You use it to combine words, such as self-absorbed or ex-convict, or pre-Columbian, or for numbers. And then a dash is like a hyphen, but it is longer, and it's sort of like a long comma. So you use it to set apart a unique idea from a main clause, or to separate an inserted thought or clause from the main clause. It shows when dialogue has been interrupted also. So like this phrase, you could use commas around it, you could use parentheses around it, but you might want a longer pause, so then you would use a dash. Sometimes writing for money, rather than art or pleasure, is really quite enjoyable. Or if you're writing dialogue and you want the person to be interrupted, you do a dash at the end of it. So that is your specialty punctuation. I have a game that you can play. Not really a game, Khan Academy. So you can go through and do that. Alright, up next is subject-verb agreement. So, a singular subject, such as the word DNA, requires a singular verb, such as is. DNA is the basis of molecular heredity. If you have a plural subject or a compound subject, when you have 2 subjects, then you require a plural verb, such as the plural subject laws. You would use the plural verb are. Newton's 3 laws of motion are the basics. Or a compound subject such as the liver and kidneys, because they both do the verb, so you would use the plural verb remove. They remove. Because you can restate that with the word they instead of it. Because instead you just say the liver removes, the kidneys remove, well, kidneys is plural. The liver removes. Alright, as a note, singular indefinite pronouns always require a singular verb plural indefinite pronouns always require a plural verb. So, common singular indefinite pronouns are, so these are all considered singular. Anybody, anyone, each, either, everyone, much, neither. So you would use like is for all of those. Everyone is. And then ones that are always plural, both, few, many, others, or several. So then you would use are. Both are, few are, several are. Some indefinite pronouns, such as all, anyone, most, none, some, can be either singular or plural depending on the context. So those you just have to watch. Alright, so for subject-verb agreement, I have a game. You can play there. Or I do have a worksheet for this one. Open it up with Google Docs. Fill it out. You choose the correct verb to match the subject. So figure out what the subject is, who or what is doing the action, and be careful to not choose a subject that's part of a description phrase, such as of this horrible disease, or of the fan screams, or of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, or of physics. Those are all of. So those are all prepositional phrases that could be taken out. So, those can't be subjects if they're just descriptions. And there you go, there's subject-verb agreement. Alright, up next, we have pronoun antecedent agreement. Same idea as subject-verb agreement, where you are trying to match the plurality, and you also want to match the gender in this case. So a pronoun is a word that stands in for another noun. So you're not always restating the person's name or whatever you're talking about. So instead of always saying Mrs. Soper class, in Mrs. Soper's class, I have a lot of work for Mrs. Soper's class. Mrs. Soper's class is so fun. I like Mrs. Soper's class. Sometimes you can use the pronoun her class, to stand in for Mrs. Soper. Okay, so if your pronoun, if the antecedent, that's just what the pronoun is referring to. So if the antecedent is singular, such as everyone, you learned in the last lesson that everyone is always singular, then use a singular pronoun such as his or her. Or if your pronoun is standing in for a word like the table, singular, so you would use it. If the pronoun, or the antecedent, is plural, such as students, then the pronoun would be plural as well, such as their. So match the gender, match the plurality. I will give you a note that historically speaking, the word they and their has been a plural pronoun. However, as society is becoming a little bit more gender inclusive, and some people are associating with being non-binary, you can use they, singular, when you're talking about a person who's non-binary, or if you're not sure about the gender of that person. So there's just an FYI of how a grammar rule has changed. So that is pronoun antecedent agreement. To practice, you can play one of these two games. I have car rally race, or the rags to riches game that I like. Or I do have a worksheet for this one. So you open it with Google Docs. Fill it out. You're choosing the correct pronoun, singular or plural, for each of these cases. And note, if the indefinite pronoun, such as everyone, is singular, it always is singular, you would use like his or her, because that's singular, instead of their, which is plural. Alright, so that is pronoun antecedent agreement. Alright, last rule in our grammar notes is misused homophones and commonly misused words. So let me go through. I have a couple tricks for some of these. So sometimes they're spelled the same, sometimes they're spelled differently, but they are frequently confused or misused. So you should use the correct word in the correct context. For example, it's versus its, homophone, spelled differently but sounds the same. So the it's with an apostrophe here is a contraction for it is. It looks like it would be possessive, because normally that's what you do with apostrophes, but for this case, for a contraction, it stands for it is. Same with a lot of these other contractions down here. Your with an apostrophe stands for you are. Their with an apostrophe stands for they are. Whose with an apostrophe stands for who is. So those are all contractions. The apostrophe shows you that there are more letters there that you have taken out just to save time and to use slang. So if you want to use its possessive, its power supply, then you actually don't use an apostrophe. That goes against the normal rule. Alright, so we talked about your meaning you are. The other your is just possessive. It belongs to you, your phone. Same idea with there, and there. So they are, with the apostrophe, there is contraction, they are. And then the THERE is a place word over there. And something that can help you remember it is if you take the T out, it says here, so like right here. So you know it's a place word, not over there or not here, over there. And then THEIR is possessive. So if you know the word the heir to the throne, or if you're the heir to your mom's jewelry when she passes away, you are going to get it upon your parent's death or whatever. So it's possessive. So there, THEIR is possessive. Alright, 2, 2, and 2. 2 is just a place word, TO. TOO stands for either overly or also. The movie was too long, or I want to see the movie too. And then TWO is a number. Alright, affect versus affect. Affect with an A is always an action. So A, affect, A, action. It's a verb. It is doing something. The movie affects you. Or the situation is affecting our society. Affect with an E is a synonym for result. It's a noun. It is like cause and effect. So just the result of something. The music has an effect on me. And then accept versus accepts. ACCEPT is to take. I accept your apology. I will accept this gift. EXCEPT means not that. So everyone except him went home. Whose versus whose, we already kind of talked about. Who is versus possessive. Whose car. Past and past are just miswritten sometimes. These ones are sometimes confused here at the bottom among ourselves, like in a group of many parts, versus between is just two. And then fewer, use fewer if it's countable, fewer pencils, fewer people, and less if it's not quantifiable. You can't put a number on it. I am less excited. There's less love. Who, pronoun standing in for a subject, versus whom, pronoun standing in for a direct object. So that is when someone is receiving an action, you use whom. It would be like if you would use he versus him. So he is a subject. He wants the book. Who wants the book? Versus you would say the book belongs to him. Notice the M at the end. The book belongs to him. So to whom does the book belong? If it's a direct object. So that is the end of your grammar rules. I have a homophone game that you could play here. And please use all of these grammar rules correctly in your life. Okay, let me know if you have questions.